little picture of ayin. It's called the allegory of the ayin. There's a bunch of stuff you can find. I know Kabbalah just goes crazy with the stuff about the letters. They almost, go off the deep end. But I found this thing on the Hebrew for Christians website, and it was that this idea that the ayin, because it has these two things, that there's an eye in each of them. And you have your evil eye, see that would be a left, the evil eye and the good eye. And that they're both connected to your will. So you can have this outlook of the evil eye. And keep in mind, we've discussed this principle before, that the left, when you see left, it's the physical, fleshly. And when you see something right, that it's the spiritual. And so when you see stories like him separating the sheep from the goats, that the goats are on the left and the sheep are on the right. When you see him tell them to pull the net in and throw it on the right side of the boat, then they catch all the fish. The right side being the spiritual side, because I think that he was trying to say this is the kind of fish catching that you're going to do. So it's this principle that sometimes it can help open up things for you when you see a story in the Bible and it references left or right. Try to remember the left is the physical, the right is the spiritual. So here on your ayin, is it backwards? No, when you're looking at it this way, it's the right way, isn't it? Evil eyes on the left, the good eyes on the right. Yeah. Okay, both connected to the will. Now, I'm going to come back to this when we get into the middle of our story tonight. And you'll see how maybe this has something to do with our Genesis study. So, we have been doing it. Nate, you want to get him a card? You got a card there? Come on in. Yeah, there are cards in the handouts there. We've covered ayin, but everything you need to know is on there. There's a spot on the couch if you want to. We've been doing a lot of looking at the stories in Genesis like this. Really looking at the details and even some of the wording. And we'll still do a little bit of this tonight, but I wanted us to start by doing more of this. Okay, a flyover of the last 6 chapters or so, and maybe a little bit into the next chapter, just because I think both perspectives are valuable, and they can maybe open up things for us that we might not have seen. You can't see the forest for the trees. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's do that for just a second. Here's an overview of some of the events we've seen starting in about chapter 20, 21 or so. We've had Ishmael sent away, and then Ishmael takes a wife. His mom picks out a wife for him. We had an oath at Beersheba that Abraham made with Abimelech. Mm-hmm. Then we had Isaac offered up on the mountain. We had Sarah die. Abraham bought the field to bury her in. Then we had the story about Rebekah when Abraham sends his helper back to find her. That was kind of a by itself little chapter, that whole thing. We had Abraham die. Then we have, it gives Ishmael's genealogy, and then it says Ishmael died. And then it gives Isaac's genealogy, and in that, it has the story of the birth of Jacob and Esau, and that's what we're going to look at tonight. That's about where we are. We're going to get in a little bit to when Isaac pulls the she is my sister move, like his father had done twice with Sarah. And then after this, Isaac digs some wells. There's a renewed promise. That God renews his promise with Isaac. Isaac builds an altar. Abimelech comes out again and makes an oath, this time with Isaac at Beersheba. And then Esau marries, and it says he chooses his own wife, and it grieves his mother and father. Mm-hmm. And then Jacob flees, I think in chapter 27. Okay, so if you're looking at this, mm-hmm. what should really jump out at you is this Beersheba oath with Abimelech. It happens twice, and we've talked about this pattern before in Scripture, this thing called a chiasm mm-hmm. in Hebrew. Maybe in school you studied haiku or it's, how to write a paper where you had your topic sentences and all your supporting details. But there's this thing in Hebrew that they do where it's A, B, C, D, and then it works its way back out. D, C, B, A. And what's that supposed to be doing is pointing to something important. It's almost like a frame around, look here, look here. And not only that, but I think as you move out, you can compare the D's, the C's, the B's, and the A's to each other. And when you compare stories, sometimes it can open up something for you that you might not have noticed about the story when you were just looking at it real close. So this thing is called a chiasm, this structure. It's very popular. It happens everywhere. In Matthew, we found probably the whole book is a chiasm, and then there's chiasms within that, and then even verses that do that. You'll see that. You'll be reading along in the Bible, and you'll read something, and you think, but I just read something that sounded very similar to this. And that's when you need to start working your way from one to the other and see if there isn't some sort of pattern there. So if we take these two and we go back to these other stories and look at them again, you see we have for A and A, separation of Isaac and Ishmael. Down here we have the separation of Jacob and Esau. After that we have Ishmael takes a wife. Before that we have Esau takes a wife. Then you have your Beersheba oath with Abimelech. You have altar, renewed promise. This is when he says, the stars of the sand, all the nations will be blessed through you. This is with Abraham. Here you have renewed promise, and then he builds the altar. And this one was with Isaac. Okay, up here, when Sarah dies, you have a land purchase. Remember, for the 400, was it shekels? Yeah. For 400 something. Okay, here you have wells being dug. Okay, so this weird story about wells being dug, you're like, why is he talking about the wells? The Philistines filled them up with their... What's going on here? Maybe if we compared it to the land purchase, maybe there would be something there. Because it's an odd thing to put in there, but you have to remember that every story and the way the story's told and where it's placed, this is all very deliberate. This is the Word of God. Mm-hmm. Okay? Everything is deliberate. Yes. There's never something that's random or sticking out. It just seems that way to you because you haven't found where it fits.
Mm-hmm. Well, digging the wells would be like reacquiring the land, right? Because if the wells were filled with dirt, you couldn't use that land anymore, most likely. So that could be similar to acquiring land.
Yeah. So think about that, because I don't think we're going to get to that piece until next week. So be thinking, how does that, and read it, and the wording, and see if anything catches your attention. Mm-hmm. We have the Rebecca story where Isaac's bride is revealed to the family. Okay, she's revealed to Eliezer because she gets the water for his camels, and then they talk to her family so they know, and then she comes back and sees Isaac out in the field. Yeah. Okay, so we have her revealed to the close, the ones on the inner circle. Mm-hmm. Here, when Isaac goes and says, she is my sister, what we have happening is now she's revealed to the king of the land, Abimelech. Mm. Okay, so we're gonna look at that, and we're probably gonna back and forth with those two. But in the center here, we have this really strange thing where we have the death of Abraham, Ishmael's genealogy, death of Ishmael, Isaac's genealogy, which includes this story about Jacob and Esau. Mm. And that's what I want to look into first. Now, remember, the left is the physical, right is the spiritual. The words used to describe these two, these twins. Okay, Esau was red. Somebody fill this in with red and the word for red, and
it's a derivation of Adam. I think there's a Bob in there where Adam is Aleph, Dalet, Mem. I'm not thinking clearly. And then Esau, or red, Aleph, Dalet, Vav. Am I saying that right? Is it coming out clear?
I think so.
But it's the same idea, because Adam's name means red or ruddy because he's taken from the ground.
Okay. He's hairy, like a beast. He's a hunter. He's a man of the field. And from the parables in the New Testament, what is the field?
The world.
The world. Okay. So, and he has an appetite for red stuff. So, red. Got appetite.
It's also associated with blood, and the flushing of blood, the red.
Excellent. Jacob, it says, this is how he's described as a peaceful man, living in tents. We're assuming he was in there studying with the patriarchs. And his desire was for the birthright, not the red stuff. He wanted the birthright. So we have our physical Esau and our spiritual Jacob. Now, this birthright and blessing thing, it was a bit of a conundrum for me. I was trying to look at what's the difference. Because when I was growing up and I heard this story about Jacob and Esau, I thought they were the same thing. And I thought, why was he not upset when he took it the first time, and then Esau gets so upset when he takes it the second time? I don't think it's the same thing. Right. From what I could tell, and you can throw in whatever you know or have learned here, or correct whatever I think I've discovered, that the birthright had to do with authority or becoming head of the household, that he would be making decisions, be in charge of, he would have responsibility as the head of the household. And that blessing, I'm looking at the blessing that he actually received from his dad, and then also the blessings that his dad gave that he gave his 12 sons later in Egypt. And I'm seeing this has to do with your power or destiny, that, these things are going to happen to you, and they're pretty much temporal about what's going to happen to you on this earth, to your line, to your tribe, what you would be, what you become. And I think that this blessing part had to do with the wealth, the inheritance. And so if it is in fact that the birthright has more to do with responsibility and the blessing to do with wealth and power, then you understand why Esau, who is physical flesh, is not so concerned about the responsibility as the spiritual authority in the family. He wants the wealth and the power because that's a physical thing. That's what his appetite is for. That's what his eye is on. And that Jacob, being our spiritual, his desire is for that head of the household responsibility in the family. So, let's review our characters. We've got Abraham, the father, because we're about to take this story, and I know I brought this up before, and it's probably just review, but if we look at this story and who these characters are, we might be able to internalize it a little better. You have Abraham, who is the father. You have Isaac, the son he was promised, so we call him the promised son. And then you have Rebekah, his bride. Who, you following me, right? With the promised son and his bride. And who is the bride? Well, we certainly hope that we are the bride, correct? Okay, so maybe we need to really look at what's going on with the bride in this story and the details that are given about this bride of the promised son and see if that applies to us. So I want you to, as we read these words, I want you to identify yourself with Rebekah as she hears these words about what is going on within her. It is said, when she's talking about this struggle, 2 nations or peoples are inside of you, in your womb. 2 peoples shall break from your body, and 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So, this sounds a little bit like Paul in Romans, when he's talking about this struggle inside of him. I do what I don't, I don't want to do this, but I do it. Yeah. Okay, and for that which I'm doing, I do not understand, for I'm not practicing what I would like to do, but I'm doing the very thing that I hate. He's got a struggle within, between what? The physical and the spiritual. Okay, Jacob and Esau. He's got his own Jacob and Esau inside of him. It says, I joyfully concur with the law of God in the inner man, but I see a different law in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind. And when it's talking about that struggle that Rebekah felt inside of her, it wasn't just a lot of rolling around and movement. The word used there was violence inside of there. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those babies broke a couple of her ribs. I mean, there was a lot going on in there. And so if we are Rebekah and we are the bride, we have this struggle inside of us, just like Paul did. And it's a... I think for us to think that now that we know Yeshua, we don't have that struggle, that's just silly. That's naive. We need to understand this is going on. If it was going on with Paul, it's going on inside of us. And if we think it's not, we're probably just not paying close enough attention. He goes on in Romans, for those who according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, which Esau did. He wanted red stuff. Those who are according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Because the mind set on flesh is hostile towards God, for it does not subject itself to the law of God, for it is not even able to do so. And that said, it said the elder will serve or subject itself to the older. That's what needs to happen within us. The physical needs to be subject to the spiritual. But which one is stronger? It said one is stronger than the other. Which one is it talking about?
Where does it say that? Stronger than the other? Which verse are you talking about?
It's the
One people shall be stronger than the other.
Which verse? I'm trying to find it.
Oh, that's 25, 23.
Okay, that's what
Okay.
I'm behind.
I always thought it was the stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. That Jacob was the stronger one. But with this this thing that Paul says, I don't know. Who was stronger out of Esau and Jacob?
well, strength can be defined different ways.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
I wonder what he meant and which one he meant.
Well, we know that he fears Esau later,
Yeah.
so if it's referring to something physical.
Maybe in the physical, Esau was. Because it feels like that to me. It feels like my physical is stronger than my spiritual.
Well, how
Keith.
do you- okay.
I'm just going to go by the Hebrew word is amatz, and it's saying that it's to be alert or mentally encourage, be courageous, good courage, steadfast minded, strong. It's more of a mental
Oh,
strength.
okay.
Cool.
So that may be it. Because we know Esau's the physical strength.
Yeah.
But Jacob, I think, has the
Has
mental
tenacity.
strength.
Yeah. All right.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. Somebody else had a hand up.
Well, you might have been about to say what I was going to say. Just about just to kind of, I don't know, maybe clarify a little bit about the
There
elder.
he is. Welcome.
It's good to see you.
Me too.
Back and roll. I'll be right back.
About who the elder is and who the younger is.
Is it about spirit and flesh?
Just that flesh is first and that the scripture
Yeah.
doesn't say flesh came first.
And I was going to, oops. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right there. The two births.
Yeah.
Who's first, who's second? Yeah. Who was born first? The physical, Esau or Jacob?
Is it
Esau.
the,
The physical. Okay, so this whole idea of two births, of us being born twice, these twins within us. Here we have the two births he talks about to Nicodemus when he says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh. That's what the first thing. That which is born of spirit is spirit. Do not be amazed that I said you must be born again. So here's Yeshua talking to Nicodemus. And I think both him and Paul are, it's almost like the Jacob and Esau story is their illustration for what they are trying to say about this struggle within these two things. Because I've said it before, I'll say it again. We are a unique creature. Okay, we're not like the beasts that are purely physical.
yeah.
And we're not like the angels who are spirit. We are a creature where the two come together. And I think we're trying to learn how that works. Did you have anything to add to that, Tracy?
Just 1 Corinthians 15:46 is when Paul also talks about for the natural, the physical is first and then the spiritual. So it's just more
Excellent.
of that same idea. How Messiah and Adam represents the physical, and Messiah the spiritual. It's just the pattern throughout Scripture is always the flesh is born first, the spirit second. The firstborn of God is always like the secondborn, or he's never the firstborn.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it's just the pattern that we need to pay attention
It is.
to.
That's good.
At this point, I wanted to take us back to the ayin, because I think we saw before that these two eyes, one that was the evil eye and one was the good eye, that were connected, that this could be our Jacob and Esau. And I wanted to show you in the alphabet how this letter falls. That last week we talked about Samic, and Samic meant support. And remember, it was tied to the priestly blessing. When they do this thing and they lean, because it also means to lean on, that the priestly blessing, I think in Numbers, has 60 letters and 15 words. And this means 60, and it is the 15th letter. So we have this tie to blessing. And over here, the letter we'll learn next week is pay, or mouth. So you have your physical, it was his appetite. He had an appetite for red stuff. Okay, that's what his eye was on. Jacob's eye was on the blessing, the support. If we go back to our chiasm, I wanted to move out now. Did anybody have anything more they wanted to say about the... Did you have something you'd like to say? No? Okay.
Do you think that this picture that we're shaping here kind of carries on to the next couple of chapters? The reason I'm asking is because in the first slide we talked about the birthright versus the blessing and who the bride is, and where Jacob's eyes were on this birthright and Esau was on the blessing, but then the bride, Rebecca, kind of stages this operation to take the blessing as well.
Yes, she does.
And whether or not that, I know we talked about him eventually having to serve Laban as maybe a punishment for that or a consequence of that, but was it really a wrongdoing for this picture we're putting together?
I'm not sure. I think we should keep all these things in the back of our mind as we encounter these stories coming up and how they might go back and forth. I know that when you look at Jacob, and we're going to look at his life, he was horrible. He struggled and struggled and struggled. I mean, he even struggled with God. He wrestled with God.
Yes.
But what did he say? Bless me or I'm not going to let you go. Okay, his desire was for the blessing. I think that and the land and the wells, dirt, water, dirt, physical. Water is more of a spiritual thing. You can't measure it. It doesn't have a color. It's yes.
What he says too is when he blesses him and calls him Israel, he says you would wrestle with God and with men and prevail. So I think that's what we're seeing is you have to wrestle with both. You have to wrestle in this world with people, with yourself, and you have to prevail according to God's word.
And he did. He wrestled with his brother. He wrestled with Laban. Even his sons. That was a struggle too. So yeah, as we look at his life, and it's so opposite of Abraham. Abraham didn't, I mean, when you put those two against each other, Abraham couldn't have kids. Jacob, he had no problems with that. You know, Abraham was wealthy, had things. Jacob, when he left, he had nothing. And he had to work.
But through the wife that he loved, he did have a problem. She was barren. And then she gave.
Yes,
So
I
there
know.
is that in there or something.
There is. Okay. Anything else before we move on from Jacob and Esau, that struggle within? Yes, Carla.
Well, I had, I think it might have been in Yashar or something, where reading about their births, you know, I kept being told that it was that Jacob was trying to grab his heel and get out first, if you will. But another perspective was that he was actually, because of the struggle going on there, protecting his life, because that foot was trying to kill him with that soft spot on the child's head, that he was protecting himself.
And that, when you think about heel and head, that takes you back to what he told the serpent in the garden with the heel. It's almost like the physical's trying to flip that around and make it happen the other way. But no,
It's trying to rule. The flesh is
it
trying
is.
to rule.
And the flesh, Esau, wants to kill Jacob. Jacob doesn't want to kill Esau. Jacob doesn't have that hate. So the spirit doesn't have that hate for the flesh, but the flesh wants to kill the spirit. I think we need to keep that in mind when we think about ourselves. It's that kind of nasty battle. Anything else on this too, Grace?
I don't know if it's a connection or not, but to me, I kept thinking, back when Joseph, brothers sold him, and then when he saw his brothers and they were talking, he said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And then you have the situation with the twins being born, Isaac and Jacob. And I've always thought, until this week, I've always thought that Rebecca was really, how could she be considered a righteous person to not necessarily says that she was righteous, but I mean it gives examples of how she did right and all this stuff when Eliezer came and found her and stuff. But then she's really kind of sneaky. She's a conniver. We all named our daughter, didn't know it. But anyway.
She has a servant's heart, but she also facilitated some deception.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bride ain't perfect, is she?
She didn't mean it for bad, but she meant to make sure it came out the way it was supposed to. Kind of
Yeah.
put things in her own hands.
Yeah.
And God made it for good, and had it being used just like the people who God would have them go into slavery to the people because they had been not living right, and then God annihilated the people because they had hurt his people, but he had set it up.
I know.
It really kind of gets a lot of flipping back and forth, and just kind of you walk away and you say, Lord,
A lot of whys,
you are
huh?
sovereign.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if we are supposed to understand this physical versus spiritual picture, is she really just blessing the spirit and trying to not bless the flesh?
Mm.
That's why I was asking, is what she did really all that bad?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Well, I'd like to tag on to that too, because I think it's easy to just think she wanted it her way, but I've heard it talked about in 25 verse 23 when the Lord said to her, and he tells her about the two nations, that it's kind of like he's telling her, okay, I'm telling you this, and you now have to make it happen, kind of thing. It's like it's your responsibility to watch over this. And she knew his word because God said it directly to her. It's not like she was told by someone else. And yet when you read about Isaac, Isaac couldn't see it. He was partially blind. So he couldn't see anything other than the physical of what he knew as a firstborn.
In fact, when that goes down, he says the voice is spiritual. The voice is Jacob's,
Yes.
but since he could feel the hairy arm, the physical, he said it must be.
Yeah.
Just spiritually blind.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to wonder about that, given he was the one offered he's supposed to be this messianic picture, but, I guess no one could be the perfect messianic picture.
Did he
I don't
even
know.
that Jehovah had told her that?
I don't know. Doesn't say one way or the other. I don't think I could keep that under my hat. But
Certainly they wouldn't have told the children. That would have been really challenging.
yeah. Okay, you ready for the genealogies? So much fun. All right, there's something a little weird here. Okay, genealogies, and when it says that these are the generations of, okay. Generations, that word that's used when it says that is toldot, and it's spelled 3 different ways in the Bible. 3. Let's talk about the different spellings. This is the most complete spelling. Okay, it has 2 vavs in it. Okay, we've talked about vav, that letter. It means man or connection or nail, tent peg, okay, to secure things together. It's the Hebrew letter that's used to make the word and, put something with something else, this and that, connect them together. You see it used on the tabernacle. All these little things right here, those are vavs all around, holding the spiritual pattern from the heavenlies to the physical, the ground. Okay, connecting physical and spiritual. You see the first vav in Genesis, the very first sentence, right there. Okay, and it means it's the and. We've talked about this olive tav here and this olive tav here. This one has a nail. Okay, the first one, the olive tav, the alpha and omega, they say in Greek. The second one, the pierced one, because the second time he comes, we see him, the pierced one. Okay, so we kind of know who the vav is, the connector. We see it here. What is it connecting? The heavens and the earth. It's connecting the spiritual to the physical. So, who is that vav that restores the connection between the spiritual and the physical? Yeshua. Okay. In fact, I've read some commentary on this with these two vavs in Toldo, that you got your first man, Adam, who's broke the connection between the physical and the spiritual. And you have your second Adam, another name for Yeshua, who comes and restores. Okay. Now, when it says this right here is used that very first time in Genesis, where these are the generations of the heavens and the earth after he's created everything, before anything's gone wrong, you've got both vavs. The connection's there. Everything's complete. Okay. After the garden incident, every time it says the generations of Adam, the generations of Noah, and so on and so forth, it's missing the second vav. It only has this one. Okay? Now, there is one more with the vav reinserted, but you have to go all the way to Ruth to find it. And it's in the, now these are the generations of Perez. And then it lists the generations of Perez ending with David. Because who's the son of David? Messiah. You've got your second vav back on the way.
So it comes back after that time, you said?
It's in Genesis 2:4, and you won't see it again until Ruth. But every time between there, when it talks about the generations, it's incomplete. Now, there's a third spelling. It only happens once that I know of. I'm pretty sure it's only once. Okay, and it's in the middle of this chiasm. Okay, when it says these are the generations of Isaac, it's got the first vav, not the second, but it has the first. When it says these are the generations of Ishmael, it doesn't have either one. What does that mean? Anybody? I don't know what it means. What do you think it means? Do we not want to talk about what it means?
No connector.
There's not a physical or a spiritual connection there.
What is that then?
Well, you know, Ishmael wasn't the line of the seed for David, the physical line. Messiah wasn't coming through him. There's no restoration there. I'm not saying Ishmael's awful or anything.
Well, it makes me wonder, what is he? If you're not
It
physical
seems
and
to
you're
be
not
in altogether
spiritual,
different category.
it sounds like a different entity.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's an odd thing.
There is a similar spelling of this one in Exodus 6:19. It's talking about the generations of Levi. I don't know what it would have to do with this, but it says, and the sons of Merari, Mahali, and Mushi, these are the families of Levi according to their generations. And it's that same spelling. It's got the lamed in the front, which is 2, and then there is the mem at the end.
So
But it's got the same spelling in between.
It's this in between with the sticky letters on the front and back.
So it has no vav?
So maybe we should look at what do they and Ishmael,
These were
what's the connection?
Yeah, I was wondering, I don't know off the top
You're
of my
saying
head.
they were Levi's.
Yeah.
Like the sons of Merari, Mahali, and Mushi.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's curious.
Very.
And this, we're moving away from that. Is that okay? Everybody?
You'd be able to figure that
Kind of
out.
moving back? Yeah, I didn't expect it. I just wanted to throw that out there. And Tracy said this before tonight, that there's this principle of not the first, but the second. Okay? It's not Ishmael, it's Isaac. It's not Esau, it's Jacob. It's not the first coming, it's the second coming.
It's not the flesh, it's the spirit.
Yeah. So that's you can keep that, tuck that away in a pocket in your brain somewhere, not the first, but the second. Now, with all this connection, these vavs connecting the spiritual and the physical, and Jacob being spiritual and Esau being the physical, we'd almost expect there to be some kind of vav connecting them, maybe. So let's take a look. Maybe there is a vav here connecting these two. Here you have, it says, it's describing the birth, and it says his hand was holding to the heel of Esau, and his name was called Jacob. And in, a reminder, Esau's physical, I think we got this. In the Hebrew, there's holding to the heel is a word, and then you have these 4 words here. You have a word for Esau, a word for and called, a word for his name, and then a word for Jacob. So what we're looking for here is this connection between the physical and the spiritual. Is there a vav here between these two? And I don't have like a font that's Hebrew, so I wrote it down.
Oh.
Okay. I need my marker. Oh, it's stuck on the back here. Here we go. Okay. All right, so we're looking at this way, because it's Hebrew, remember?
Yep.
Okay. So we have the holding to the heel. So heel was out, that would have been here if I had room. Okay. So the heel of Esau. So let's say that this is Esau's heel. Okay, here's Esau, here's Jacob. If we go like this, from left to right, we have Yod, Shin, Vav, Ayin. What does that spell? Yeshua.
Yeshua, sorry. I'm like, what am I looking at?
So we have this connection. He's not just holding on to his heel. We have this connection between the physical and the spiritual. That might just be a little piece of spiritual candy with not much nutrition, but there it is. All right. What time is it? Oh, we're going to finish early. Okay. Now, let's go back to our chiasm, start working our way out. We have, we're not going to finish early. I just forgot a section. Sorry. Don't get your hopes up. Okay, Isaac's bride revealed to the king of the land. Okay, we're going to read through this. This is chapter 26. He read through chapter 25 last week, and we kind of wrapped that up, talking about the birth of Ishmael, or Esau and Jacob. Now we're going to read just the first 11 verses of Genesis 26. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. And I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and I will give your descendants these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So Isaac lived in Gerar. When the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." For he was afraid to say, "my wife," thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful. And it came about, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out through a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with his wife Rebekah. Weird word, sporting. Anyway, then Abimelech called Isaac, and he said, behold, certainly she is your wife. How then did you say, she is my sister? And Isaac said to him, because I said, lest I die on account of her. And Abimelech said, what is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech charged all the people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Now, I know we have spent a lot of time talking about she is my sister, and how could they do that to their wives? But what I would like us to do, I'd like us to again, look at all three incidents, but through a little bit different lens. I would like us to observe the location, the wife, and the ruler of the land. Let's just forget the husband for a minute and what he did and whether it was bad or justified or anything like that. The location. The first time it happened when Abraham went to Egypt. The second and third time happened in the same place. It was near Gaza, in the land. That's location. What happens to the wife? The first time it says Sarah is taken into Pharaoh's house. The second time it says Abimelech sent and took Sarah. And I think that is important, the sent and took. You might think it's the same as her being taken into Pharaoh's house, but it's worded a little differently. Just keep that in mind. And then the third time, it doesn't say anything about them coming and getting Rebekah and taking her anywhere. It just says they lived there a long time. And apparently, if they were sporting together, they were still hanging out. And no one had come and got her and separated them. Now, how does the king of the land figure out that this is someone's wife? The first time in Egypt, it was revealed by plagues. The second time, it was revealed to the king in a dream. And the king actually was having a conversation with Elohim. The third time, there was no supernatural thing, no conversation with God, no plagues. The king saw through a window that there was some affection there that is not a brother-sister type of thing. And then, as a result, the first time, Pharaoh says, take her and go. And Abraham is escorted away with his wife and all his belongings. Now, before, when he was still her brother, he was given all kinds of livestock and servants. Okay, so he prospered before they found out. Then he got to take everything with him when he left. The second time, it says that he returned his wife. I'm sure Pharaoh returned her as well. But here it says, returned his wife. He said, live where you want. He gave him some money. And then the king and his household were healed. And his concubines were able to have their children. He closed up the wounds. That was healed. Okay, the third time, the king orders that they not be touched. He doesn't tell him to get out right away. Then it says Isaac sows 100-fold. And then later the king comes back to him. That wasn't in that section we read there. But shortly after he sows 100-fold, the king says, you're getting stronger than us. We need you to move out here a little bit. So, given those little details about these three accounts, there is a suggestion that these parallel the three exiles, the Egyptian exile, the Babylonian exile. I realize the Assyrian's not in there. Let's just move along with this for now. Okay, Egyptian exile, the Babylonian exile, and the Roman exile. In the Egyptian exile, they went to Egypt, just like Abraham voluntarily went down there. The bride was taken in. Okay, Israel was taken into Egypt. They prospered. They prospered so much that Pharaoh didn't like it and tried to shut them down a little bit. It was revealed to Pharaoh, this is my people, this is my bride, through plagues. And then eventually, when it got so bad, he said, get out of here. Take her and go. And they took all their stuff and they left. The Babylonian exile, they are in the land. The king, Babylon, sends and takes. Okay? the bride away. Okay, they go to the land and take them. This revealed to the king in a dream and converses with Elohim. I know there was a lot of stuff with Nebuchadnezzar. He even wrote a chapter in the Bible. He had some dreams. Not sure that I didn't delve into that. If you want to look at that and see if it parallels, that would be awesome. It said he returned the bride, and when Cyrus became king, he returned them. And what did he give them? Money. And that's what Abraham got after when they returned, was money, 1,000 pieces of silver. I'm sure it was more than that here, because it said rebuild your temple, live where you want, go back, return, and here's some money.
Wow.
Now the Roman exile, it says that Isaac went to Abimelech. And from what I remember, wasn't Israel trying to ally with Rome? We're at the time of Yeshua now. And they were trying to get along. They were, and in the middle of this, they're trying to, they've got the Romans are there, but Israel is still kind of allowed to rule over themselves. But you have the promise renewed. You have Yeshua come, renewed covenant. Okay, and I thought that was an odd place in this story of she is my sister, that after he goes to Abimelech, God comes to him and renews the promise right then. It seemed like like it was stuck in awkwardly. But if it is indeed a little picture of this, then I understand why it's there. There a long time. The Roman exile, they weren't necessarily all gathered up and taken somewhere, or it's just been a long time, and they're kind of spread out. Okay, you weren't enslaved or anything like that. The bride revealed. This time, the bride is revealed by love. Somebody help me with quoting the verse. They will know you.
They will know my disciples, but you have love for one another.
For love for one another. Okay. And then this one, I see this, sows 100-fold, because that's what's happening right now. But the other two, I don't know, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm not sure there. You might want to, if that interests you, take a look, maybe, because you'd be looking at prophecy here, that the not be touched, don't touch the man or the wife, he said.
Well, yeah, it says in Revelation or some, don't touch those who are sealed, don't touch those, any green thing. And the prophets it's written, do not touch my anointed. So that's probably a connection there.
And then you can leave now because you're so much stronger than us. So.
Well, I'm just from what you said with the stronger, the one with sort of the other.
Yeah.
That's connecting in my head. The spiritual is stronger than the flesh kind of thing.
All right.
That definitely is something that's not happened yet.
Anybody else want to comment on the exiles in this? Is this maybe a fresher way to look at the she is my sister?
Oh yeah,
stuff?
this is like cool.
Okay. So we when we're looking at it through a magnifying glass, we get really hung up on Abraham. How could you do that? And Isaac.
Yeah.
Like father, like son. But maybe those three weird stories are there because they're a picture of something else. Maybe. Okay. So let's go back to our chiasm. We just looked at Isaac's bride revealed to Abimelech, king of the land. And we talked previously about Isaac's bride revealed to the family, because those were bookends to this center section here. And I remembered when we were talking about when Rebecca comes back, she sees Isaac in the field and she throws on her veil. And I thought, if this is a picture of the bride and the promised son, then here there is a delay before we come face to face with our husband. And maybe that's what that veil thing was about.
See in part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Every little detail in these stories is deliberately put there. Okay? It would take you a lifetime to figure out just a small percentage of them, but it's fun because it's there and it connects. Now, in terms of the rest of this, I wanted us to just remember, that inside this, if you want to look at it as a seed, and this is the crux of the issue, this bride, the promised son's bride. On the outer edges, you have, Ishmael taking a wife and Esau taking a wife. And we know that in terms of restoring the physical and the spiritual, those two don't figure into it. And there's this pattern that keeps happening. It's been happening since he created the earth, this separation. And it's happening with his family. 2 kids, separate them. 2 more kids, separate them. So, and even if you look at Jacob and Esau as being our physical and spiritual, they get separated for a while. And as we read that story, let's think about that. Let's think about, why did that spiritual get removed from the physical for a while and have to struggle against A, B, C, D? Maybe just keep it in mind. And then think about for next week, how does this story about the wells being dug? And I looked a little bit. I kind of ran out of time, so this is going to be it. But I looked at it a little bit. I saw one little tiny thing, and I'm like, I just don't get it yet.
What I'm seeing, because the whole parable of the sower, letting that inform other scriptures, is that you were bought with a price, and we represent the ground or the land. So that's the first step. The second step is the wells. They all come to the wells of Yeshua, salvation. He gives you the water of life. And that represents the teaching, the spirit that teaches, that waters the seed of the word that's in the ground. It causes it to grow. So there could be a parallel.
That's really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And in all this, I don't want you to walk away thinking that, I know the way we've talked about the physical and the flesh, we think bad. We want to get rid of that altogether. It's not what we want. We want it to serve the younger. We don't have to hate our flesh and start whipping ourselves, doing that kind of, because that in itself is fleshly, because now you've become obsessed with flesh. It's like people can be obsessed, rich people can be obsessed with money and materialistic, but I've seen poor people that are just as obsessed with money, which is materialistic. Okay, you don't want to swing too far the other way. Remember, we're a combination of the two.
Yeah.
There's an order in which these need to be, and it's our lifelong struggle in this dirt suit that we wear to try and make that be in the right order. So, that's as far as I got. So, does anybody else have input that they want to?
I just saw something cool in the Hebrew when we were reading about the sporting, Isaac and his wife sporting. It's a Hebrew wordplay. It's actually Isaac's name twice.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's verse.
He saw laughter
8.
laughing.
Yeah, it's verse 8.
Yeah.
So he saw Isaac, and let's see, and lo, Isaac sporting with Rebekah. So it's, and lo, it'd kind of be like saying an Isaacing, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and lo, Yitzhak Mitzakik.
I don't know how to say.
So the mem is got the from in there. So Isaac from laughing or sporting with Rebekah. So it's the same connotation of what his name is. He was doing with her, which I think is interesting. When you think of him being the promised seed and his name being, I don't know. I'm probably getting too abstract, but
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, one more thing about the ayin. Can
Yes.
I say something with the ayin?
Yeah.
So the Hebrew word shema,
Mm-hmm.
which means to hear, intelligently, proclaim, obey, all those things. There's no other Hebrew word for obey, it's shema. And there's no other Hebrew word for hear, it's shema, so it's all one thing. And looking at the Hebrew word picture broken up is kind of neat because it's got the sheen, the mem, and the ayin, which is our letter today. The ayin comes at the end, so it's the I. Sheen and mem spells name.
I'm not going the right way.
Yeah, the other way. There you go. So it's the sheen and the mem and the ayin. So the sheen and mem together actually spells name in Hebrew, and the ayin is an I. So to hear, intelligently obey is to see the name. Do you see that? See.
This is the eye.
Yeah, to see the name, or the name is seen.
This means name.
And in Revelation 19:13, Messiah is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And if you put the pieces together in Revelation, you learn that the seal on the God's people's forehead is his name. And his word is his name. In the beginning was the word is God, the word was God. So it's all of these things about, if you hear and obey intelligently, if you are his people, you will hear him, you will see him, and you will pronounce his name and take on his name. Just kind of a neat word picture. See the name.
All right.
Also, one thing I noticed in verse 5, you look at the writer of Hebrews, talks about the household of faith, and Abraham's mentioned as being justified by faith. And looking at verse 5, it says he kept the law. It says, Abraham hath hearkened to my voice, keepeth my charge, my commands, my statutes, and my laws. Just
That verse we
interesting.
just read, huh?
Yeah,
It was-
just
I just-
interesting to see
He
that
kept the law
Abraham
before
kept.
Moses wrote it down.
Oh yeah, that's always interesting when we talk about the law before Moses. Yeah, it
It's
says
a word play.
commands, laws, statutes.
Statutes.
So there was some kind of transfer of those things.
Yes, there was. And I bet that's what
Moses.
Jacob was in the tent learning.
Yeah. Cool.
Oop. Oh dear. Never mind. All right. There we have it.
Love it.
Now, who would like to?